Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is up and coming in the South Carolina community. Riding the waves of a new album, she's returned back to what she loves most. Welcome, Mackenzie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Um, I always like to start with where your journey with music kind of all started.
Oh man. I'm really bad about not keeping things concise, but I'll try. Um, my grandparents had and still have an upright piano, and my mom took lessons when she was little, and she showed me like one song. You kind of play with your knuckles. I forget what it's called. I think a lot of people probably know it, but um I started wanting to learn to play piano in that moment and eventually took lessons. Um, and then in sixth grade, I joined orchestra and played cello. And in middle school, I started writing lyrics. And yeah, it didn't start out too well, but I've gotten better since then. I think the first good one I wrote was probably in ninth grade, a couple of them. And actually, one of those was on my last EP. I recorded it at 24 after writing it at 14, almost 15. So that was kind of weird. Um, but yeah, and then my mom has always been really into music. She would play Prince and and all kinds of older music. There's like a video of my brother and I dancing to night party like it's 1999 that she has. And yeah, and then my brother, he was actually in a band. He's 5.5 years older than me, but he was in a band that was like a Christian metal band basically, and he's always been creative, and he actually is in the video space now and directed my last music video. So um, yeah, I would say like my mom and my brother both had a big influence on me for sure.
I It's funny. I started on piano as well, and I almost did the cello, like, because I was like, oh, like it's so cool. And then my mom's like, didn't you want to take piano lessons? And I was like, oh yeah, let's
Yeah.
do that. And so then I did that instead of the cello thing. But you got lucky enough to do both. That's awesome. Um,
Well, I'm very indecisive, and when I was choosing between violin and cello, I'm an Enneagram 4, I think, the individualist. I don't know if you've ever taken one of those, but
mhm.
like to be different or whatever, quote unquote. But my brother was like, well, less people will play the cello, and he showed me like two songs with violin and cello, and one was an Evanescence song, and I ended up writing an Evanescence song later and playing cello in it and stuff, and we set a piano on fire and all that stuff. But um, I look up to my brother a lot, so I was like, I'm just gonna do the cello, and it sounded cool. So
No, it's a cool instrument. I think maybe one day I'll make my way back to it. Um,
yeah,
but no, I mean, coming from musical sort of roots in that way, it sounds like it's kind of just always been there, whether it's been the most prevalent thing or not, which is always really cool, especially to have that sort of like anecdote of like, I wrote this song and then didn't do anything with it for 10 years.
yeah.
That's that's crazy because go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was
Uh,
trailing off on that one.
it sparked a memory, an embarrassing memory, but I was in the Miss South Carolina pageant by
Mm-hmm.
mistake when I was like 16. I actually played that song that I wrote in that pageant. It was pretty terrible. I didn't do a good job. It's okay though.
um, did you do like going back to it, like however long after the fact when you originally went back to it? Did it Was it one of those things where it's like the idea's there, let's kind of workshop her a little bit, or was it just like I don't know how I wrote this at 14, like let's hold it tried and true as it is and make that into whatever we make it into?
Yeah, I didn't really change anything lyrically and kept kind of the same concept with piano, but when I recorded starting out, I was more piano heavy, and now things are a little bit more produced, with it being more in like a pop um direction. The first two songs that I ever recorded back in 2015 were one, that like Evanescence song that I told you about, which
Hmm.
I performed Hello in a pageant. If you've ever heard that song, it's a real creepy song, and that's what I decided to do for a pageant. And my friend did a different Evanescence song, My Immortal, and we're just both very strange individuals. And she was in the Miss South Carolina pageant too. But anyway, yeah, I pretty much held it as it was, and I had recorded a couple of songs before that one, so I'd kind of gotten used to that a little bit. Um, and yeah, I was like, wow, it was a chance to reflect and be like, oh, cool, I'm uh kind of going back to this thing and honoring this thing that I wrote as one of my two first songs that actually were decent. So, and then like just thinking about the story of why I wrote it is like very adolescent, but but I still wanted to do it, and I thought it was a cool thing to do.
Yeah, to be able to return to something that you've been like sitting on for so long is always cool. I've had my fair share of like, I like this, but is it like, do I want to do anything with it? But it's also like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You just go back and forth, but it's always cool when you can hold on to something and then like want to sort of keep it intact in that way and really kind of preserve it in its original value, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
at what point in starting to write music and everything were you like, okay, I like this. I think I'm starting to actually like, as you put it, like write things that are good. And at what point was it like, maybe I should do like the artist thing. Maybe I want to record these and put them out and sort of take that and make it a thing. What kind of was that process like?
I think so. The story about, growing up in music or whatever, I appreciate you, because I've felt like, oh, I don't have this really cool story where my family played music together and we were all in a band together, and like my mom was like this famous like guitar, you know what I mean? So I've always just felt like, okay, the story is not that, but it's still special, and it's me, but and my family. But sorry, my brain lost the question. Oh yeah, I remember now. Sorry. But being that my brother did do music, he had been wanting to have a band called Atrexia for like forever. I think since he was like 16, and he and his best friend Matt, who's also an awesome musician and was in that band from before, from Tomorrow. They finally formed that band together in 2015. So I can't math right now, but I guess my brother was maybe like 26, I want to say. But they finally did that, and they went and recorded it, and had a music video and everything. So I literally just met my producer through my brother being like, yeah, I went and recorded with him, and I was like, cool, I want to do that. So kind of went and started with that, and then Aaron, who um produced the music video with Trey, he's my producer for, or the director for, my first two music videos, and he was very heavily involved with this last one as well. And we may not be working on something else. It's not quite a music video, but there's some stuff coming. And like I couldn't imagine doing projects without him either. He's awesome. So it just kind of all came together, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, very clearly there is some sort of music root in the family if you found who you're working with now through your brother.
Yeah,
Like
and I
it's just
remember I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I remember making like a recording of a song I'd written, like on voice memos and then like burning it to a disc for like somebody I was dating. I was like, here's these songs. And it was like really crappy. So getting to actually go record it and be like, wow, this sounds great was cool. Not crappy, but the quality, is a lot different. So
Yeah. No, I think we've all been there at some point in time. The at home thing is great, but if you don't know what you're doing, good luck.
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so it but it that makes the stuff since then that has actually been developed, even at least in half of the ways that you want it to be, sound all that much better. It's like the
Yeah.
baby steps seem that much bigger when you start from a very strong ground zero.
Oh
um
yeah.
yeah, no, it's always interesting to see how those sort of develop and whatnot over time. It's like it just keeps going, and that's the best part, is like you can look back and be like, I don't like this anymore, but I liked it at one point, and that just means that this stuff's that much better.
Yeah. And different people, like, it's so cool to me, like how subjective music is, and also just how everybody relates to it differently. And not only can different people relate to a song differently, but you can relate to the same song differently, years from now or whatever. But all my songs, I had an EP before this, which had pretty much almost the same number of songs, 7 originals, and the album actually has only 7 originals. One's a cover song, but um all of them have had less than 1,000 streams on Spotify. You look at your stuff and you see that little sad less than 1,000. And finally, one of the songs, Used to It, um, which had it ended up being a song that now has over 5,000 streams. And I know that's not some crazy number, but it's growth for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Rihanna or somebody would be like, that is not good. Like for me, for her, but it's good for me. And then one of the I actually have my old CD right here. One of the songs from this one, it ended up hitting over 1,000 recently because it kept popping up after the other one. I was like, why is it doing that? And finally it said over 1,000. I was like, what? People are listening to this one? Okay. Because it's not my favorite. Like even the one that has over 5,000, I really like that song, but it's not my favorite on the album. So it's, cool to see that sometimes people will like the song that you think is not the best one or whatever, but you know.
I think it's notorious that pretty much all artists, it's like my favorite song of my personal catalog is not the one that is like sitting at the top of my like Spotify profile. Like the only song on the
Yeah.
album I put out, it was like there's one song that I was like, it doesn't do as much for me. It fits for what it is and whatnot, but I was like, multiple people came back and said that was one of their favorites, and I'm like, really? Like that one?
Yes, and
Like there's other ones that are
actually,
so much better.
yeah, and there was a professional who, and you can't strive for perfection, and you have to keep in mind that music is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to not take any sort of like advice or criticism with my music. I'd just be like, nah, this is mine, and like nobody's gonna tell me anything or whatever. But I'm open to constructive criticism now, but you also can't be open to everything, because if you go by everybody's opinion, everybody's going to have a different one, and then it's just going to turn into something that's not you and not what you wanted. When, like, yes, maybe we want to make money from music so that we can do what we love and get paid for it, but at the end of the day, it's my therapy first and foremost, and like I can't let anybody take that away from me, because then what's the point? But I remember he had very good feedback for one of my older songs, and then this was actually the song that we did this music video for, and this is the most expensive music video I've had. It hurt to pay for it, but he was like, I don't think I'd put this out, and I was just like, what? And it kind of threw me for a loop. And then I was like, wait a minute. And there was this student sitting in on a production or a day that I was in the studio, and he said that was his favorite song, and like other people really liked it. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to trust my gut. And people have been relating to it. And it's a song that has changed so much for me and its meaning because when I wrote it, it was what most young women write about. It was about a relationship and just going through the tail end of that and just trying to hold on. And now it's about something completely different. It is about just self growth, and that it solidified that even more. Like when I was doing the video, that's kind of when it took on this whole new meaning because the meaning went from that relationship, the end of that, to oh, this is a song I recorded, I'm proud of it, this is why I like this song, to oh, this is self growth because we were shooting the video and my brother looks at me, he's like, now look in the mirror and just pretend that you're leaving like all of your bull crap behind. And like he knows what my bull crap is, it's my brother. Like, and that's what I realized. I mean, because I've been going through a lot of growth, I'm not where I want to be yet. We never will be. It's a constant thing, but like we all have things that we don't like about ourselves that we want to shed and kind of leave behind. And the struggle to do that daily is kind of how I look at that song now. So
Yeah, that's always interesting too. Is not even just to look at it and see how someone else interprets the meaning of something that you wrote, whether it's right on the money or completely out of left field, but also to like look back at the stuff that you wrote, knowing what it was originally about, and then being able to kind of take it and reframe it in the current light. And that's something that kind of happens as time goes on and as, like you said, personal growth happens and whatnot. But it's always interesting to see because then you can also kind of enable yourself to view it from the consumer point of view of like, oh, somebody might have heard this when it came out and thought it was like how I'm viewing it now, like 5 years later, but it's not what I originally kind of wrote it as. But it's like everybody's seeing everything differently.
yeah, and you can't strive for perfection either. I am a perfectionist and I'm like a very anxious person, but I don't even want to say that because I'm trying not to be. So I don't want to like say I am, but that's been a struggle of mine since I was a toddler. And so I've always been very perfectionistic. And so I re recorded the vocals on the song Self because I didn't like the way I had enunciated something or something like that. Re-recorded it. It sounded worse. Like it was fine the way it was before. So we went back to that. I'm like, wow, I just wasted studio time doing this. So sometimes, I mean, like, yes, you don't want to just throw everything out there if you don't feel good about it or like just be sloppy or whatever. But it's art. Like you can't just harp on every little thing and like wait for the perfect moment and just wait for everything to be perfect because we're also critical of ourselves. And so it's like we're never going to be like, oh, I feel 1,000% awesome about this. You just got to keep putting it out and people will relate to it.
If it makes you feel any better, the second time I took the ACT, I did 3 points worse than I did the first time. So
Oh, same.
sometimes the second time around, it's not just not as good as the first. Sometimes it's beginner's luck in a way.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. That same thing happened to me. But
What do you find most often inspires your writing?
honestly, just real life. And pretty much almost all of my songs are real situations that I've been through. And I'm very much a lyricist first and foremost. And this is my therapy. And that's how I deal with things. So a lot of times people have said, "Oh, you need to write happy songs," or like, "Why don't you write a happy song?" Dude, I tried to write one, and literally after I wrote it the top my failed attempt at writing like on purpose, like a happy song or whatever. And I get it, but there's definitely a market for that. Um, people do enjoy the sad parts as well. Like some of my favorite artists, like Nothing Nowhere. NF, which I mentioned both of them in one of my songs, Pretty Unstable, which is probably one of the saddest songs. But and Sasha Sloan, she's literally known as Sad Girl Sloan, and Lana Del Rey and all those people. Julia Michaels. When I hear their songs, I just appreciate how real they're being, and it helps me remember that I am not alone. I'm not the only one struggling. And so, what would I be doing if I didn't write what was on my heart? That could be a missed opportunity for somebody to connect and know that there's somebody else out there that's feeling the same way. And so some of the stuff on the album, I mean, the album's overarching theme is mental health, and it's got a lot of the life experiences that pretty much we all go through just being humans. It may not be the same situation, but it's the human experience. I do have some more upbeat stuff, but some of the lyrics are still pretty heavy. And there's everything from emotional abuse to just dealing with anxiety and depression to but there's learning to be in a healthy relationship. There is healing, which is the cover song. Fletcher, love her. And then there's self-acceptance with the title track, Black Butterfly. And, I think we need to be real. And if your happy song is real, that's awesome. That's going to shine through if you're having fun, but you can't like fake it in either direction, I don't think.
Not well, at least in most
Yeah.
cases. I mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
could still tell a story that might not be current, but might be like something that, it's I think it's I think because when it comes to those sort of polarizing emotions, the more negative experiences are ones that I think we more associate with specific events, whereas, the happy and more positive things tend to be just an overall experience. So kind
Yeah.
of pulling from a story, it's more likely than not it's going to be from a probably unfortunate time rather than like,
Yeah.
happy. It's more you're describing that sort of feeling and experience. And it's sometimes harder to take that a step further and get into details and actually tell some sort of story with it. So, I mean, I feel the same way. None of my stuff is ever really that upbeat and typically not the most fun, but
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's just easier. And also it's like really like you're not going to have like music is like a coping mechanism in a way for
Exactly. That's
when you're
exactly
writing
what I
it.
was going to
So
say.
you're not going to cope with happiness. Like that's not how it works. You're
Exactly.
just going to
That
enjoy
it, you
that.
took the words right out of my mouth. Yes, I agree, 1,000%.
So I think that's a big part of it. But um,
Yeah.
if you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would you call it?
I don't know if this is new or not, but I do know that people have always asked me what genre of music I am. And I've always really struggled with that because one, I was like, I don't know. And two, I'm like, I don't want to put myself in a box. I just kind of write, and then like however it comes out is however it comes out. But I will say that, the first EP was not nearly as cohesive as this album. And some people have told me, don't call it that, but I call it sad pop. That's what that's what I've been calling it. Maybe I should call it mental health pop or therapy pop. I don't know. But I mean, it's just real life, deep lyrics with some pop sounds. So
I mean, fair enough. I think coming from the I only write sad music kind of falls into place there.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to. My favorite part about this question is that nobody ever wants to answer it because it is like they hate just like classifying it in it like a an existing genre, let alone having to make one up on the spot. So but it's always interesting because it's like, what is it about what you're doing that you think kind of falls into a category of one, if you will, like what is it that's a genre that is just your music? And it's hard because it's hard enough to put ourselves in an existing box, let alone one that only fits our stuff. Um, is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist in terms of like the sample you would give to someone to be like, this is a taste of the rest of my catalog. If you like this, you'll be a fan.
I I think my favorite song, which it changes periodically, but I think it's definitely one of my favorites, and that doesn't change, is Pretty Unstable. You think I'm pretty, but I feel pretty unstable. Wanna be happy, but it seems I'm unable to keep these thoughts from coming through. I feel so guilty cause my life looks good on paper. I'm missing chemicals that could help me feel better. Don't know what's wrong with me, why can't I just be happy? Shit, I think I'm gonna lose it, and I just wanna have a breakdown right now. All I wanna do is cry. Yeah, I just wanna have a breakdown right now. Can someone tell me it's alright? And that one's very deep. It's about anxiety and just that struggle, and like just the fact that sometimes we have these feelings that don't necessarily make sense. Just like the song says, I feel so guilty because my life looks good on paper. And it's like, oh, the guilt of, oh, I should feel happy or whatever. And it also has this little rap breakdown, which no one would expect from me. So maybe that part's not not like, oh, you're gonna hear this all the time, but it's a fun little surprise. But I think that one is probably one of my favorites.
One of your favorites and the best sort of glimpse at the big picture,
Yeah, I would say so.
aside from the unexpected little rap portion.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
That's just to show the fun alternative of maybe this will happen again.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
seen it all. You've seen it
exactly.
all if you've heard that one, right?
Yes, no, if you've heard my country song that
Oh no.
I I never released it. It's not a bad song. I just cringe a little bit just cuz. But it's deep on my website if you want to look for it.
No, do you think that also, looking at that song, not the country one, the one that we actually want to talk about, um,
Okay.
looking at that one, do you think that's also a good depiction of sort of where things are heading as well? Or is it just sort of a snapshot of the current present moment?
I think that's hard to answer because I don't know what a future project will look like.
Mm.
That's kind of up to how things play out. Because I was very excited, like I think I'm finding my sound more, and then I've like seen some elements of other things. I'm like, oh, that would be really cool, or like I think that I could pull this off, or definitely not Christina Aguilera. I can't do that. I remember somebody asking me to sing one of her songs one time. I was like, yeah, I don't have that kind of voice, but this over here, I think I could jive with, I'm not as much of a powerhouse voice. I'm, an alto, and I have kind of like a lighter, simpler voice, if you will. I guess I cover some Casey Musgraves, so I do cover some country stuff, but um I know I'm biased because of how God made my voice. It's not a powerhouse. But I have an appreciation for like those simpler voices in addition to our powerhouses. I'm a huge Kelly Clarkson fan, first concert, so love her. Sorry, my dog was shaking, but yeah, I think this is more of the direction I'm gonna go in for now, but there's definitely some little ideas lurking around in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to ever solidify yourself in one position because even you think you look at Kelly Clarkson, you look at Lady Gaga, you look at Taylor Swift, every album is different. We're not sitting in
Exactly. I
the
was thinking
same
about Taylor.
in the same space for too long
The
ever.
eras.
So yeah,
There, yes.
it's just it's always moving from one thing to the next. And yes, they're like tangential to each other. You can still connect them in a very like, oh, it still sounds like Taylor Swift, it still sounds like Gaga, but it's like they're not doing the same thing twice, really. Like
Yeah.
Joanne is very different from art pop, and Red is very different from 1989, and I think those were back to back. So they're all just it's all different. So you can't really like limit it too much or necessarily predict what's going to happen because you haven't written it yet.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. In 6 months, someone told me that that could almost pass as like a country song, or whatever. But I was like in my boho vibes on that, like the music video and the album art and everything. And then on Black Butterfly, I bust out with a suit. I love a good suit. So the black shiny suit, and definitely got out of my comfort zone with that photo shoot for sure. And even like the butterflies in the hair is so subtle that people probably don't even realize it, but I purposefully put the colorful ones on one side and then more of like the moths and the darker color butterflies on the other, because I am a very bubbly person. People, they meet me, they would never know that, I struggle with like anxiety or depression or anything like that. And so the colorful ones kind of represent, oh, this is, what people see from me, what they see. And then this other part is like, this is what I'm dealing with on the inside on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's always interesting to make those like, there are those like artistic choices that it's like people overlook. Like on on Sour, I don't remember which song it was, but Olivia Rodrigo said it was like it's like I said I love you between the verse and the chorus or whatever it is, and it's like in there, but it's like she talks about it. She's like, most people don't catch that that's in there, but it's in there. It's like we do all these things to sort of enhance whatever the task is at hand and the project is at hand, but sometimes it's like to the casual consumer eye, nothing. Um, but it just it's one of those things that when you think about it and when you realize it, it's like that's cool. Like that's dope. Like that was
Yeah, I
that
didn't
was a
want it to
that
be
was a
too
choice.
obvious.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's almost better that way. It's like if it's too in your face, then everybody knows. Gotta save it for the ones that
Yeah.
are worthy of knowing.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
If you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who is on the list?
That's really hard because there are some people that I have listened to more recently that I feel like my music could be kind of in that category, but they're newer in my life, so I don't feel like my stuff was like built on that. But you are also influenced by, everything
Everything.
you listen to, so that's hard. I almost died when I was at the at the music conference that we met at.
Mm-hmm.
Um there were some girls in line for Renee Rapp, and they had listened to my music, and I came back and they were like, one girl's like, you sound like Fletcher, and I was like, what? I was like, what? I'm like, I stood in line for her right here, waited outside for her. I love Fletcher. I love how I would say my music is a lot more like PG and clean. I but Fletcher, what I love about her is her ability to just say it how it is, expose herself, like the vulnerability. And I think she's such a good lyricist. And so I do not I do not think I sound like her, but I almost died when that girl told me that. Um and I who else? This is really hard. um I don't know, I just think it's a combination of everybody, but I definitely think Carly Hansen is really talented. I like her sound. Maggie Lindemann. I think those are some of the people that fall into that same kind of like overall pop sound of some of that. So apparently my dog's bored with me because I hear her yawning over there. She's sitting next to my Jonas Brothers poster that I just framed. But yeah, I think those are some for sure. And just growing up, I've loved the first two. Well, it's a single artist and a duo, sister duo, people that I started listening to of my own accord. Because my mom, like I said, had us listening to Prince, and then she had us listening to some country stuff like Faith Hill and all that. And then my older brother had me listening to Deftones and Nirvana and Foo Fighters, uh, which are still great. But Allie and AJ and Kelly Clarkson were like my first ones that I kind of locked in on, and Kelly Clarkson was my first concert, and I got to see Allie and AJ about a year and a half ago, and got to meet them, and I was like, please be nice or my life's gonna be ruined, and they were so sweet. And they put on such a good show. um I and their new stuff, oh my gosh, that it's awesome. I love them. Those are some great ones, and like I said, Nothing Nowhere, I love his stuff. He's kind of changed a little bit recently because he's going more mainstream, but his older stuff, oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's really good.
Um, yeah, it's interesting the list of whether it's people we've been like your for example with yours, your Kelly Clarkson, Allie and AJ to the more modern Fletcher, Carly Hansen. Um, it's
And
always
Avril Lavigne,
interesting.
I love her.
Yeah, that's right in that lane. So, but it's always interesting to see how you can kind of see differences between your like roots, if you will, and the
Yeah.
newly um drafted to the roster lineup
Yeah.
of artists and whatnot, and how you can see little bits and pieces of like what they're doing in what you're doing. Um,
Yeah.
what specific elements of those different acts do you think is been fused into what you're making?
You know what? I think Fletcher's a sad girl like me. So just those deep lyrics, but I mean that's always been something um that I feel like I've done, but she definitely challenges me to aspire to a new level because I have had a filter to some extent. And even just talking about that, being a Christian, sometimes there's things that I want to say, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, and in my album, like I said, all of my songs have been clean and all that. And two of my songs, which one is Fletcher's, of course, they say SHIT. And so I was like, I was talking to my producer, and he's a Christ follower as well, and I was like, "What am I gonna do?" I was like, "I feel like this adds to the song, and this is really what I want to say, but people might be like, what?" or whatever. And he was like, "I think it'll be fine. I think it's fine." I'm like, "Okay," and and that was fine because I didn't feel, I I didn't feel convicted about it personally. It was a thing of, oh, what's this person from church gonna think or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, that's not what really matters here. So even just kind of stepping into that. And then I don't know. There's just something, and like Tate McRae is a good one. I think I'm saying her name right. She's a good one too. It's just, I don't know, that fun kind of pop, those pop elements in the music, but it's just telling a story, which is what a lot of music does, but just telling a story of our experiences. But not all music does that. Sometimes it's kind of random. Sometimes I'm like, what's going on? What are they saying? But, you know, there tends to be a story of, this is what happened. This is my experience. And we all have different experiences. But I mean, music, like, I don't know that we're ever coming up with anything that's truly new. We're all going off of what we know and what we've heard and trying to create a different combination of that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be new music, but it will always be taking elements from existing music. Like you're never going to just like, because even genres are just reinvented versions of what was once existent and stuff like that. And so it's like, yes, it will continue to be new in that sort of perceived way, but it's still just a different culmination of different elements than what music has been so far, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is a
And we're
really
not
kind of
creating new
a
words.
no, exactly. It's very paradoxical in a way.
Yeah, you're just combining them differently.
Mm-hmm. It sounds really easy when you put it that way.
It's not the I mean, some songs come easily and some it's like, wow, I
Pulling teeth.
really need to finish this. Yeah.
But yeah. What is an outside passion of yours that you feel impacts who you are as an artist?
Um, I was that person in school that wanted to do everything. And so I did marching band, I did color guard, I did orchestra, cheerleading, like all this stuff, and graduated surprisingly top of my class because I remember one of my teachers being like, "You can't do everything." I'm like, "But I want to be an ice skater and a veterinarian and a and like an astronaut, not an astronaut, nah, but that's too scary." But I have a lot of different interests. Um, and one thing that I ended up doing, I outside of this, I actually have a fitness, a body confidence coaching business online. And so a passion of mine is helping women just see that they're beautiful. They don't need to like change how they look, just take care of themselves. And so I found that basically because of all those things I fell in love with in high school that I couldn't do anymore. And so that left a hole in my heart as far as like being active and moving and stuff. Um, I love choreography. And so I ended up, like every girl does, going to Zumba. And I ended up becoming a Zumba instructor, which I had wanted to do, but I ended up on my way there to one of the classes. I ended up getting in a car accident, fractured my pelvis, and all this stuff. But I did finally end up becoming an instructor, and I really loved encouraging people. And it just kind of spiraled from there, where I ended up becoming a certified personal trainer and a nutrition coach and all that. So I'm pretty passionate about that as well, about health. And I think just like with the mental health stuff, and it's hard too because in a way I feel like artist Mackenzie is closer to like who I am at my core. um but because Coach Mackenzie is a little more put together and all those things, but also vulnerable at the same time, because I think that's important to have somebody that's relatable leading you. But you know, with our health, that's a way to cope with mental health. There's my faith. I pray about the things I'm going through, try to remember Bible verses and things like that. But then also, exercising to release endorphins and eating well so that I, feel better, and just taking care of myself as well. And I think I'm pretty passionate about that, because the fitness industry can really be made to belittle women and men sometimes as well. And oh, you need to have this certain aesthetic. And I love helping people break free of that. But sorry, that was a long-winded answer. I'm pretty passionate about that as well. But
just just all the things. Just passionate about all the
yeah,
things.
yeah. And we're like watching figure skating yesterday or Sunday, and I'm like, I want to do that. I'm like, I've always wanted to do that.
It's I am the same way. It's like, oh, like there's like something that I'm like briefly exposed to, and it's like you have somewhat of an interest in, and it's like, well, let me do that too. And then it's like, well, because of these six other things that are currently going on, that doesn't exactly seem probable. Or realistic really in
Yeah,
any sorts. We can only spread ourselves so thin. So
yeah,
yeah, we gotta draw the line somewhere. It's just we usually draw the line further than we should.
yeah. True, true. I'm guilty.
What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
Oh, I hate this question.
I think everybody always interprets this as like me asking why you think you're better than other independent artists, which is not what I'm
Yeah.
asking. Because I've had people be like,
Okay.
well, I don't really want to say that. And I'm like, well, no, it's more of like, what is it that you think about your artistry that's different than what anybody else is like either doing, or, essentially do you bring to the table that isn't already being brought?
Um, can you still see me, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. My computer is doing something weird again. I think that's a tough question, because like we mentioned before, we're not really necessarily creating something new, but it's a culmination of all of the things that we've been exposed to, and we're just kind of putting them in a different order. But I think every artist has something to bring to the table, and I think really no one is going to be able to communicate my individual experiences of what I have dealt with or gotten through or am experiencing better than me. And that goes for everybody. But I do think that I have some important things to say, and that people have been relating to. And I think it's important because, like I said, this album is about mental health, and that's something that so many people, especially in this country, are struggling with. And I think it's important to be open with that and supportive of each other. And even though I've always had an easier time talking about these things in music, I've actually been sharing the stories of what was behind this or that song, and that's been a little bit harder. But I think it's important to do it, because it's not just for us, it's for other people struggling with that too, because not everybody has a platform or like a way to talk about that, or maybe they're too shy to. So it's important to do it for those people.
100%. I think, and I think that goes back to even further back in our conversation about like you write something and it's like it can connect with people in all these different ways. And while there will be people that will interpret the song in a different way than you probably necessarily intended to or really wrote it for, there will be people that are experiencing borderline the same thing that you wrote said song about. And like you said, it's not the always the easiest thing to have conversations about or to address in whatever way, shape, or form. But having, I mean, music is something that I will continue to say every episode is incomparable to anything else. There's nothing that you can really replace it with. It's always going to be just its own indescribable thing. And so being able to convey certain things through a medium like that has a strong potential for a level of impact that is not achieved through other means. And so being able to convey these things through said medium, odds are there are going to be plenty of people that will consume it and be like, wow, like this is impactful. I'm like, this is just genuinely exactly what I'm experiencing, exactly what I'm going through, all of that. And it's always interesting to see the receiving end of it and see how people are taking it and see how something that you created ultimately impacts the people receiving it. What impact do you ultimately want to have with your artistry and with your music?
Yeah, I think definitely the one that I'm focused on right now is just helping people with mental health, encouraging them to reach out for support. Um, we live in a fallen world and we're going to go through suffering and it's really hard. And sometimes the first thing that we do is isolate, and that's like not not what's going to help us. Um, and I know humans are imperfect and sometimes, they hurt us and they will, but we need to be open to getting some support. And I'm very blessed to have a family that is supportive, and um you know I'm able to lean on God and stuff. And I know some people don't have, maybe they don't have a family, or maybe they don't have a lot of people in their support group, but there are resources, the national helpline, and getting involved in maybe a small group or something where you can have those people to reach out and support you. And don't feel like you're a burden, because I've been there and sometimes I still go there. And you know and my friends have told me that too when they've reached out to me. If they're going through something, they're like, oh, I'm sorry to burden you with this. I'm like, no, like, I'm here to carry it with you. Like, we care about each other, we love each other. That's what we're supposed to do, and like, I'm happy to do it. And so, know that if someone truly loves you, that you are not burdening them by sharing your struggle or asking for help.
Yeah, and I think um I I always find a way to spin things in a better light because it's it can be daunting to do the independent artist thing and just be sending music out into the void, and so it's like you have to kind of look at the other side of things. But with that, it's kind of like having those conversations, um you know it exposes you in some sort of vulnerable way, but then that relationship will be strengthened from it. So it's almost like you're not just doing yourself a favor getting it off your chest, but it's also like you're enhancing the quality of that relationship with whoever it is on that receiving end. Um, and if that conversation's not for you, music exists. Listen
Yeah.
and consume and whatever else comes
And
along with
therapy.
it.
Therapy's good. I have this as therapy, but I have like actual therapy too. I'm like, thank you to my therapist for helping me.
you know, it, everybody deals with things in different ways. It's just a matter of finding what works for you. And I think it's the same. Like, I feel like that's life. It's like not every career is for everyone, and it's not all music is for
Yeah.
everyone, and not all aspects of being an artist are for every artist. It's just
Yeah.
finding the shoe that fits and deciding that you're going to keep wearing it.
Exactly. And like there are other ways to cope too, like dancing I think can be a great thing, just like or sports or whatever it is can be um the music for someone else if music's not their thing.
100%. I think that brings us to the final question, which is ultimately the concept behind the podcast, which is why music?
This is a hard question. Like why do I do music or
Why music?
why music? Music because as we pointed out before, I feel like music is there the thing that's there besides my dog that will never judge me. And it's a way for me to cope, like we said before, and just be creative. And I think even if it's not in a musical way, like which this is why music, so I'm choosing music, but um I think we're meant to be creative in some aspect, and that helps us connect deeper with ourselves and with others. Um, and it's something that I can't imagine my life without. It's the place where I cry, where I laugh, where it's my diary. It's everything. I think it's probably one of the deepest ways that people can connect to each other. I don't think it knows any bounds. It's deeper than words because it's combining words and emotion and like different sounds. And that's what I'm gonna say about why music.
Yeah, I mean, we've already established there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else that can take the place of it. Um, it's an indispensable in that way. Um, and it just carries an impact in ways nothing else will. And it will continue to do so because we will never really ever run out of new music because there will always be something new.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool to leave a legacy. I'm like, my music's gonna be here after I'm dead. Hopefully somebody finds it. Hopefully my great 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 granddaughter, as the Jonas Brothers say, in the year 3000, she'll be like, "Ah, my great 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 grandma was so cool."
No, exactly. It is cool to be able to leave behind a mark in a unique kind of way, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.